Chloe.
Ling.
All right. I don't know where we're gonna talk to, who we're gonna talk to, on where, but here we are,
Here we are,
diving headfirst in.
diving in.
Let's do it. Should we talk a little bit about ourselves?
I guess that makes sense, right?
Yeah, let's start there. So, hello everybody. My name is Ling, and this is my friend Chloe.
Hello, everybody.
Yeah, you start first.
Oh, okay. Well, we're coming on here to talk about race. And what brought us here is all of the things that are going on right now in the world.
Yeah.
George Floyd murder, Breonna Taylor, all of these people who have been murdered, and all of the civil rights things that are
Movement.
going on, the protests. Yeah, it's a movement, the rioting, the looting, all of the, it's just a crazy time, and a lot of people are talking about race. And we chatted about it the other day, about like, what does it mean to be biracial in this time, and like, you're raising a biracial daughter, I am biracial, like, how does this apply to us? How can we be part of the change? And how can we start conversations
Yeah.
around this issue?
And I agree that we are part of the change, regardless of whether or not we want to start it, or we did or do anything. We already are part of the change. The wave
Mm-hmm.
has already come crashing on us and on everybody, right? It's like resisting it is hard at this point.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about resistance not from the standpoint like it's not something we want to do. It's more like it's one of the most uncomfortable things that anybody in this country like has to acknowledge and has wants to talk about, because the promise, like me as a Vietnamese, the promise of this country is you come here regardless of who you are, what your skin color is, what your status, doesn't matter. Like you come here, we assume that you are equal, right? Like that's the whole thing. Like that's the ideal and idea of coming here. So to like look into the mirror, into that promises, those promises, and be like, let's examine it, right? Like let's talk about like the core of what you have been believing in this whole time, and let's
Mm-hmm.
examine it, is uncomfortable and is hard.
Mm-hmm.
uh, but just as I was saying before we started recording, even though it's hard, and especially because it's hard, we have to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I'm so glad you mentioned it first. It's like in our many years, 10 years, yeah, 10 years of friendship now, like we didn't really have to talk about race. We we went to a very liberal college. Everybody assumed that it's like more or less people are on the same page about
Mm-hmm.
social justice, right? About
Right.
racism, condemning it like a thing in the past.
Right.
Yeah, like it's most of the time, like I'm a social major, you science major. um in my context, most of the time it's like in sociology or something, like it talks about it gets talked about in a very theoretical um lens.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like the only time that I saw something like more real, more visceral, is like always the murder of some Black man, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like a protest would happen here and there, and like people would like get fed up for a little bit. And it all feels like there's that. Yeah, like someone gets murdered, people get fed up, and like what's next?
But it never led to a bigger conversation like it has now
Yeah,
that's beyond like initial disgust and then kind of moving on right away. So,
exactly. Like that's the thing that's different this time. Maybe it's social media, maybe it's just this tipping point that somehow we got here. Um, Maybe it's the current administration just like forcing this conversation because of their act of not talking about this conversation.
mhm,
So there's so many factors, but I agree this time it just feels so different and so real and so visceral. Like the other day, I went to a protest right here in this valley. I'm living in Colorado right now. It's a mountainous town, very small, like 5,000 people small, mostly white, mostly retired, older community. I went to this rally expecting like 20 people to show up, right? There were like 500. It's just this biggest group of people I've seen, like aside from like 4th of July, or some
mhm,
concert.
mhm,
And it just makes me pause. Like this is a movement because if you can get a community who mostly, in the 60s, you wouldn't see this kind of energy in like a mostly white town, right? Like
mhm,
you're not going to show up in a white town and have most of the protesters being like not black or
mhm,
yeah, like don't have any like direct stake in the issues. But you see it now, like if like and it's erupting in all of the states in like 18 countries already and counting. Most
mhm.
people are white. Most people are going on the street are white. And yeah, I think that's the difference to the 60s as well as to, I guess, like protests here and there that we've seen in the past decade or so, um, is the collective has finally, for whatever reason, awakened.
Yeah, I think hopefully it means that the collective has realized that in order to make any kind of real change, they have to be they have to participate. We have to participate. Everyone has to participate. It can't just be the people that are the victims of it,
Hmm.
crying out because
They've
we
been
need the
murdered
attention
this
of
whole time.
we
Like,
need the
stop
attention of
killing us.
everybody. Yeah.
Like,
It's like we're all
oh,
human. We all are automatically a part of the conversation
yeah,
because we're all human, and that's the whole point of the problem. It's like why
even
is there more
debating.
value?
Yeah. Like, why?
Yeah,
Like, it's human lives we're talking
it's
about. Like,
right. Yeah,
it like really up for debate. Like, is my humanity a
it
statistic
shouldn't
to
be.
you? Like, what?
Right.
Yeah. Mm. Ah, so you are black and white,
Mhm. My mom's black and my dad is white. Yep.
and yeah, like tell me from that perspective, it must be conflicting. It's like the word I'm struggling to say. Like it's just, yeah, conflicting is the word I can think of.
The
Or
word I think that describes it, for me, the word that describes it most accurately is confusing.
mm,
I've been confused my whole life about race, and I've tried to have conversations about it, and my parents have been defensive. Like, in their eyes, they don't see it, they don't see race, and that always bothered me because 'cause I'm like,
hmm.
"How can you raise biracial kids and not talk about race?"
Yeah.
That baffles me. I'm like, "I'm trying to communicate to you that, like, my experience needs to be I need to have this conversation, and you're getting all defensive," and I just was like that just made me even more confused.
Hmm.
Um, So, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, this whole umbrella, this whole nice on the surface, I don't see race, I don't see colors. Everybody is the same ideal, right? It's so American. Like I saw this sign the other day at the protest. Racism is so America that when you're protesting it, people think that you're protesting America. Like talking about race is considered like racist. Like it's considered like no, that means you don't treat everybody equal. That means you see everybody different. Therefore we shouldn't talk about race. I feel like that's the premise. Is like I don't see anything different, you and I are the same, obviously, so why are we talking about race? That is so wrong. That is like so dismissive
It's
of
dismissive and it's ignorant.
it's
It's like
ignorant.
you're completely ignoring the problem.
Yeah,
You, like, refuse to see it.
yeah, you refuse to like because you see everybody the same, quote unquote. You don't have to examine yourself and the problem and your own biases and the systems, even if you don't actively engage in it, benefiting you from being just part of the system in the first place.
Mhm.
And you know,
And
like when people,
you're benefiting enough from it that you're far away from it that you don't see it.
yeah, you're
It's
so
like you're
far away
so
because,
in privilege that you don't even have to acknowledge the problem because
yeah,
you're so in it. You can just say, "Oh, well, it doesn't affect me." Like,
and that's true for a small number of people that are like black or biracial like you or people of color who like made it, right? Like it's actually true for a certain number of people who made it, who don't have to think about it, who don't live in the hood, who don't get killed because they're mostly surrounded by white people, or by proximity to white they consider like they've arrived. And then like people, the large silent collective would be like, look at those people, look at Oprah, look at Obama, look at whoever, you know, they made it. So really that just means you're lazy, that you are not here. Like
mhm,
it's tokenization at its worst. It's so dismissive of the struggle, the real, the big picture struggle that the majority of people are facing by cherry picking just a number of people that you can use as weapon against their own people, you know, like look
mhm.
at these people, because they made it, you don't have any say in this conversation because you're really just complaining way too much,
Yeah.
right?
I've had that said to me before, like, when I was working at a job, the owner of the business was like, um, "Why can't, like, basically, you're a great example of a Black person that has pulled themselves up by their bootstraps," or I don't remember if he was talking about, like, my mom or me or
Mm,
but he said something along those lines. This was, like, 6 years ago,
wow.
and I was just like, "No, you really can't use me as an example. You really can't," because I was born into privilege, and it's like, I don't you just it's not in the right context. It's not like, that
Yeah.
statement is not true, and
And what is the
that's
subtext of
not
that
how
statement? You know, like, oh,
no.
like I should be grateful, like because people like me, like make it, like that's why I should be like, oh, even people like me can make it. Like, is that the subtext? You know, like, are you pointing out that this this whole thing is just made up in our mind of the injustice and the imbalance power struggle, like it's all made up, is it all in my mind, like people like me make it, it's a definitive proof that everything else should be dismissed, you know? It's
Mhm.
the subtext of that, it's just so freaking microaggressive, and microaggressive. It's just aggressive and ignorant, ignorant at best, and
Mhm.
racist, absolutely racist at worst.
Right.
Yeah,
It's like, how do you respond to that? How do you what am I supposed to say to that?
I don't know. Uh,
Yeah.
so let's talk about why people are defensive.
Mm. I think there's a lot of reasons. Um, I think one of the reasons is it can be threatening to their lifestyle or their culture or their way of life, the beliefs they've held their whole lives. Um, like if this is true and I have to acknowledge it,
Mhm.
then I'm afraid of what that means for my identity, like for
Mhm.
my the choices I've made and the success I have. Like
Mhm.
I'm like don't want to admit that I'm part of the problem.
Mhm.
Then I have to admit that I have to do something about it. It's like it's just more convenient to ignore it
Mhm.
and I can.
Mhm.
And
Exactly. That's privilege right there. Like
that's
I can
privilege.
afford to not see colors, to not see race because I don't have to. I never have to. Nobody like follows me. Nobody like questions me, watches me as I go to the store, giving you my credit card. Don't ask for my identity. When I'm getting pulled over, the one thing I'm worried about is like, oh, how much the fine's gonna be. It's never
Mhm,
like anything bigger. I was checking this checklist of white privileges the other day because of my proximity to whiteness, married to a white man, surrounded by mostly white people, talk and act more like a white person than a person of color.
mhm,
That uh yeah, like I check off, I think the list has like 10 things. I check off like 3 things. That's like that's my privileges right there. Most black people can't even check any of the thing in the list. It's like simple thing like I can walk into the store buying a pack of gum and not get the look from the employee, you know,
mhm.
questioning my intent. Damn, like most people don't even have to think about that or question the basic rights that they have functioning in this society. Yeah, but you're right. Like they don't have to because they can't afford to, and it's threatening to their own identity and to the core of who they are, right? Like nobody thinks that they are racist. Absolutely not. Like nobody ever, even the most racist person, never gonna say I'm a racist. So that
I'm
let's
not
just
sure
get
that's
out.
true.
Yeah,
I'm
right
not
off the
sure
bat,
that's
it's nobody thinks that. Everybody to some extent thinks either they have some good intentions or they're a good person, they're kind, they whatever, like it's part of who, like the lies we tell ourselves, right? Like the core of who we are is this. So like having to look into the mirror and challenged is hard. Is
I think especially for the older generations, like,
mm,
who have already built their lives on the privilege, and
yeah.
I like, even for my dad, like, who has a Black family, it's like, you still can't examine where you are in this conversation, like, you still can't look at it as more than just, like, a philosophical power conversation, like, that really, like
What is his thoughts anyway, like when it comes to race? He's white and he's a hardworking entrepreneur who has
mhm.
built his business himself, or
Well,
like
it's
tell.
the business goes back 3 generations. Um, he like I said, when I brought it up a year ago, my parents were like, "We don't see race." They're like, "What are you getting at with bringing this up?" Like, they were like, "Why what are you digging for? Like, are you" I think they thought I was blaming them for, like, not parenting me right, not like, "Hey, you guys, you messed up." Um, which to a certain extent, like, is kind of I kind of feel like is true, like, but I don't know, then I'll overthink it and say it's not, like,
Well,
I don't
they can be good parents that fucked up certain things. Like, we are good, you can be good people that did some horrible thing some of the times. And I think it's a conversation that it was right of you to bring up. Like, you can't just go through life, like, what, you're like almost 30 now, the whole life, like, not talking once to the people who gave birth to you, with your identity, um, about that once. You can't do that. Like, it's integral to who you are, even though,
and I've
even
seen it yeah, I've seen it cross over into every area of my life too, because I don't have that and I feel like because I don't have the confidence really or like the foundation of talking about race and like understanding understanding my own identity in the scheme of things
Mhm,
because we've never had these conversations and because it's like it feels really unresolved inside of myself. Like I found even in college, like I felt really uncomfortable approaching race and like being part of the conversation and like I would join um for example, like I joined the Black Literary magazine and I think I went to like 2 or 3 meetings and I really liked the people there, but I just didn't feel like I belonged. I was like, what do I have to say here? Like I just felt out of place and it's like and I've had a really hard time understanding like where I fit because it's like I'm half and half,
mhm,
but I can't really even integrate it. I'm just like,
mhm,
I, I don't know. It's weird. It's like I always feel like other.
mhm,
Like, what do I have to say in this conversation? And on one hand, it's like, of course, like at the end of the day, it's just about equality and it's about, you know, non-discrimination.
mhm.
So it's simple, but it's also really, really complicated. I don't know.
Yeah. You're never white enough, never black enough. Just somewhere in the middle, and you have to find how to integrate. It's hard.
But it's fine. I mean, it's like I shouldn't have to be either or,
Yeah.
but how do you talk about it?
I'm struggling with the same thing for my daughter, who inevitably at some point will ask me about it.
Mhm.
And I don't want to steer the conversation too much away from the struggle of Black people and just racism in this country, which mainly has to do with African American communities. It's going to be a completely different conversation when you're half white and half Asian.
Mhm.
Still, I'm wondering the same kind of, am I parenting, is my parenting going to be enough for her to be confident yet also curious, and
Mhm.
self-assured enough to be like, I don't have to be, white, I don't have to be Asian. That's the beauty of it. I'm both. So that's the privilege of it. I'm both. I can understand both or try to understand both.
Mhm.
So I want her to have that, but I also want her to examine and question whenever it's uncomfortable for her.
Mhm.
Like, the concept of passing as white or certain assimilation you have to do when you're in communities of majority white people, or the other way around too. Like if she comes back to Vietnam, like the whole people looking at her as an exotic um like person.
That's another question too, is like, it's one thing to understand who you are, and but then how is the world perceiving you, and how is that affecting how, like, how you interact with people? It's like, and that in itself is confusing if you don't understand who you are, because 'cause you're allowing, like, people's projections to
Mhm.
affect your own identity. It's like you have to be solid in who you are first, and that's a struggle in itself.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, people projecting all kinds of shit on you all the time. It's not Most of the time it's not even about you. It's about, their own experiences, their
right.
own encounters in the past. Like they met like one smart Asian and they're like, oh, all Asians are smart. Like that's one of the other thing is I can't check the box where it says people will never attribute my intelligence to my race, or it's something along that line. Like if you're a white person, nobody's gonna say, oh, you are, blank because you're white. But if you are like a person of color or you're black, then they'll attribute all kinds of things. Like you're smart or you are lazy or you are, violent, like whatever the projection is. It's like because they met one person like that in the past, or they have heard about those people in the past,
Mhm.
or the media has told them, whatever. It's just absolutely frustrating when you are you. Maybe you are smart, but not because you're Asian, or maybe you are whatever, but not because of your race. It's just you happen to embrace those qualities. So now you're representative of your whole, like, this whole complicated group of people. Like, no, don't do that. See,
Yeah,
that's also the thing. It's like the white people always have individuality,
yeah,
always, but like everyone else has to be grouped, right?
has to be stereotyped, yeah,
Yeah,
and otherized. It's
yeah,
like them and us,
yeah,
the Black people, the Hispanics, the Asians.
yeah.
Like, but there's so much diversity and individuality in just among people, and yeah, like being biracial too, it's almost like people meet me and I'm a question mark. Like, one of the most annoying things is, like, when someone's first question is, "What are you?"
What are you? Like,
They wanna
can
know, like,
like
right off the bat, like, "What what's your heritage?" And I'm like, and it's not even, I feel like it's not that offensive of a question, but it always bothers me. I'm
mhm.
like, "Here we go again."
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I could only imagine. I hate when people ask those othering questions. Not because I'm not proud of where I'm from.
Right.
No, like it's really the assumption that subtext under those questions is I don't think you're one of us. Like, like I I have this anchoring feeling that you are just different. You just mm-mm.
Mhm.
Like that's the thing that bothers me is really like that's your takeaway. Like the first thing you would, and of course, like it's appearance, right? Like it is the thing that you see the first. So I get it. Like people are intrigued by something that's right in front of their eyes. But then you can't have that and also have, I don't see colors. I don't see race. Like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, that's literally on your mind this whole time, is how I am different. You just don't say it. Say it
Yeah.
politically correct in a way like, oh, like, what are you? Like, I'm interested in learning who you are and your originality and like where you're from. And yeah, I'm curious. Like, no, you just treating me a little bit different without admitting to it. Just that's the worst.
Mhm.
Let's talk about the I guess what's going on, like bigger context.
Yeah. I don't
It's
even know where to start.
I can start. My first reaction when I saw the video, 8 minutes 46 seconds, try to put myself through that whole thing because I knew it was gonna become uncomfortable, but it was so fucking important. Is he's calling for his mom? Like, I'm a mom. That's what it just got right to my heart. It's like, like, I'm a mom and I'm not gonna bear my child for 9 months and raise them for how many ever years for you to do that to my child. Even if my child does something extremely horrible. And what the fuck did he do? Like, allegedly a counterfeit $20 bill. Allegedly. It's not even proven.
Mhm.
Like, it just got so much to me as a mother, as a human, as a human. Just straight up absolutely horrible, horrifying. And then I have to like think about, like, start reading all these cases, watching all these documentaries, learning about the stories, and you basically realize it's one story. It's much too common. It actually has happened verbatim before. Someone else also got pinned
Mhm.
fucking down to the neck and also say the same thing. I can't breathe. None of that has changed. What has changed is somebody put out their phone. That's it.
Mhm.
The officers, the perpetrators of the crime, I'm not sorry they've done it because they've done it. That's why they're able to do it over and over again because they know that they're going to be protected from the law. It's
Mhm.
oh, self-defense. It's legal. It's chokehold is considered legal until last week in Minneapolis. To do that to a person from the officer standpoint is legal because, yeah, the union's gonna bail you out if you for some reason get filed, which is incredibly difficult. So the only thing that's different this time around is somebody got you on tape and you're not sorry for what you've done, you're sorry you got caught. That's what got to me. Is all of these cases, it happens over and over again because the system is so trying so hard to protect the people who supposedly have to protect people rather than harm people. And the police, they have they have to police themselves. Like, this entity who like do have so much power, they don't really have anyone holding them accountable but themselves. Like, that's in the law. Like, within the police department there will be like supposedly independent policemen who take complaints and write down those complaints and determine if those complaints are valid.
Mhm.
If they aren't, which most of the case they are deemed not valid because self-defense, whatever, their their own kind gets off, and the the victims just never get their justice. That just that's just so heavy, man. Like, when I learned about that, ugh, unbelievable, just outrageous.
Yeah. I don't know what to say. Um, I was horrified too, just like, how could you not be horrified? How can you not how can you go about your life the same? Like, if these things don't impact you deeply, then what is that saying? Like,
Yeah. Like brushing off it as like an isolated incident, for example. No, he's just one bad cop. And then initially questioning George Floyd's motive and health, the reason why he died. Like, you fucking kidding me? Like, would you have say like Jesus died from a combination of high blood pressure and lynching? Like, no, he fucking died from the lynching, not from the
right.
high blood pressure.
Yeah, and these things about him coming out or, these things coming out about him having coronavirus some time back, and, like, it's like, why is that relevant? Why
Yeah.
is that relevant? He was murdered. Like, why is that it's just noise. There's this noise that's being created around the issue, the problem, the it's like just to distract people and to get them back to being sedated. It's like, "No, it's fine. Go back to sleep. There's
Mm-hmm.
no problem here." No, and I think that is the amazing thing about what's happening is that our generation especially is like, "No, like, look at the problem. Like, this has to change."
Mm-hmm.
And we realize that, like, we're the ones that have to carry the mantle and, like, keep pushing this issue, keep pushing it. Call the
Mm-hmm.
senators, call the governors, like,
Mm-hmm.
take action, keep talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's uncomfortable, but keep talking about it, and social media is allowing us to spread a lot of information, a lot of resources. Like, I'm really proud of what everyone's doing,
Mm-hmm.
like, "Here, read these books,
Mm-hmm.
watch these documentaries, like, here's some podcasts, like, educate yourself,
Mm-hmm.
conversations, educate the people in your life, and, um and also, like, just supporting each other in this and throughout the process. It's like
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I haven't seen anything like that before.
it's amazing, and
Yeah.
it's it's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a weapon of the generation is actually not the protest is important. Absolutely. That's what pushing change. But our real innovative weapon of this century, of this generation, is social media. That's
Mhm,
how you moved the most political person, because everybody, no matter how apolitical or I don't see race, whatever, they have an Instagram account, have a Facebook account, have a Twitter account, whatever account you want, like at least one. So that's how you make real, small but real changes in people's hearts and minds. It's spreading like wildfires. It's
mhm,
unstoppable. Yeah, like my feed is too full of that from the people who I've never heard of that about, like never, you know.
mhm.
I mostly follow like moms on Instagram, like homeschooling, that kind of things. And for the most part, everybody has spoken up. And I've seen this kind of reaction from people who have done it for a long time, who have said over and over, stop killing Black people, for a long time. They have some skepticism over people's like bandwagoning on this. And I agree that this shouldn't be a bandwagon. It shouldn't be a trend. Like it's absolutely important that we continue this conversation beyond this week, today, this month, whatever, however long this movement, this momentum continues. It has to be a lifelong, literally, learning and unlearning process,
Yes.
right?
Lifelong, because it's part of human evolution to see each other equally, to have peace, literally, to have peace on earth. Like, it isn't something that you can just fix in a month. And so, yeah, you're right. It is this unlearning process. Like, you have to challenge what you believe, you have to challenge how you were raised, you have to challenge everything
Hmm.
and question it and be like, wait a second, like, because we're all part of it.
Yeah, we're all complicit if you don't. Otherwise, you can't just say this group of people get affected, they do it, I'm out of it. No, like your silence is even louder than my activism. Your silence essentially says more about who you are and what you believe in than my activism that loudly embraces who I am and what I believe in. It's it's not something you can opt out of. You're already part of the crashing wave.
Hmm. And there's also, like, protesting isn't the only way you can be a part of the movement. I think, for there's different ways that you can be a part of the conversation, and no one way is better than another. It's like, you maybe even just listening
Hmm.
to the other side, maybe
Hmm.
even just like listening and learning about other people's experiences
Hmm.
is how you start to be a part of the conversation.
Yeah.
Or just not denying it to start.
Yeah. Oh my God. The number of people. Yesterday, I saw the most insensitive joke. Um, it's like a picture of like some semen on the ground and saying, "We all start the same color." Haha, and racism. Like, WTF. Ah, there's a huge number of people like that, Chloe, right now. It's just so uncomfortable for them to even admit there's any problem going on at all. It's just resort to denying it altogether. To say this is all made up. This is all like this mob mentality.
I know. I've spoken to people like that. It's
Yeah, so you're right. Start with like fucking just not deny it, okay? Like that's that's the first step, is to admit there's a problem. Um and yeah, like social media is some people's cup of tea, is not others. That's totally fine. You can go in the street. There's enough people even in a small town like where I live. There's everywhere on every 50 states. And you live abroad, it's like 18 countries and more. We're talking about my Vietnamese friends who really, like I said, I never was taught racism or slavery or the history of America as a Vietnamese, because why would I be? Like, you weren't taught Vietnamese history. I wasn't taught American history when I grew up. But even my Vietnamese friends are taking it up on themselves to be in solidarity with Black Lives Matter. It's just beautiful. Just seeing all this genuine sharing. There's this article a long time ago now at the near end of the Vietnam War, where a group of Asian Americans, so mostly Vietnamese, talk about why it is so pivotal for Vietnamese people to support the civil rights movement, and how it's related to the effort to end the war in Vietnam. It's just this extremely important piece. So it got shared around in my friend circle in Vietnam. Why we have to be in solidarity, because we owe so much of our lives and of who we are, and why we get to where we are today, to the movement back in the 60s and to its counterpart. It feels a lot like this is now our 60s,
Hmm.
the time that we're living in. Like, imagine who you would be, who you were in the 60s if you were to live in that time. What you're doing right now is probably what you would have done back then,
Hmm.
because we are in that kind of important pivotal moment. So yeah, you can be on the street, or you can, like me, like I have the whole side of family on my husband's side, David's side, that's oblivious to the problems. I've challenged some of them, I've distanced myself to some of them, and I've called them out on their bullshit on some of them. I just decided that now is not the time for me to want to be liked, to appear nice. If
Hmm.
you saying something fucking racist and insensitive to the time, I'm gonna either block you or call you out. Just either, I'm not gonna
Hmm.
put up with your BS anymore. So that's for me, is like realizing that just because they're family, I I don't have to automatically respect or put up with them. That's a huge thing for me, is I do that. Or you can like do what we're doing right now, right? Like just talking about it, just processing our thoughts through talking about it.
Right. Or you can make art, or you can, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. Art is powerful. In
Hmm.
13th, that documentary, I love how they use rap songs in the transition from one, right? Isn't that so powerful? It's
Hmm.
like, we, the Black people, have been telling you this all this time. You just haven't chosen to listen. Or like all these songs that, like, some are popular, some have been there for years. It's like literally narrated the whole thing, but in rap lyrics.
Hmm.
Like, don't tell us that we haven't been telling you guys. Like, that's just BS. No, this has been all along. And for whatever reason, now is the time you decide to tune in. Cool. But like, don't pretend.
Finally.
Yeah. Yeah. Finally. I guess I want to end with like couple like uplifting things. I guess that was pretty uplifting, like things you can do. Mm, maybe what's like one positive, like, e- incident or example or something that came out of this that you personally experienced, maybe?
For me, I think just seeing the conversations that are cropping up everywhere is a positive thing because it means people are thinking about it and they're talking about it. I've talked about it more than I ever have, um, just with my family and my friends, and it's huge. Just seeing the movement gain momentum is a positive thing.
I'm glad. I think for me, mm, is that protest I went to was my first ever protest that I ever went to. Growing it up in Vietnam, couldn't go to any protest. It's not legal. See, that's your constitutional right. Like that's so beautiful about this whole thing, is even with its problems and it's like so many messy, fucked up things. America gives constitutional right for people to protest. That's not a given in so many places, and
Mm,
you have to exercise that.
mhm.
Protest, vote, all of that is not given. So to me, I feel hope even in the face of frustration and pain and suffering that we shouldn't dismiss, obviously, because that's why we're here in the first place. But I feel hope because I could protest. I could do it. We haven't even like touched on anything on the rioting and the looting and all of that. But see, like whenever people are taking their rights away from them of like their fundamental rights to protest, that's when this country has a problem. A big, big, big problem. So that's why people was frowning a lot when Trump tear gas at the peaceful protester for his Bible photo, right? Is
Yeah,
are you attacking our fundamental constitutional right to protest? You can't do that. Is the so yeah, but anyway, my positive thing was that I could protest. It was peaceful. I feel that's so beautiful and necessary of me to physically go out and understand that people are exercising that right in this pivotal moment.
yes, I agree. I'm glad you did that.
Yeah. I brought Nora too. Yeah.
Did she
It's
have any questions?
um
What did she think of?
yes. She say I can't breathe because people chanted for 8 minutes, 46 seconds. I can't breathe. So she says that. And she asks, what color are you? What color is Dada? What color is Pap Nana? Is Bodhi, the dog? So to her, yeah, it's not a given to her that these questions have to be so entangled with privilege and anything like that. But she has questions, She didn't just go about and assume that it's all given. It is all there is. Like, no, she has questions, but she has this innocence and this privilege and this luxury of not associating those things yet to anything. So it's our responsibility as parents, me and David, to guide her in the right light, not veering her away from it. Like,
Mhm.
no, like you shouldn't ask those questions. Those questions are valid. And I want her to be able to explore that on her own without guidance.
I love that.
I'm like so cold, like I'm like shaking this whole time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I hope it doesn't show too much on video, but um, yeah, shall we end?
Yeah, let's wrap it.
Yeah, it's a good place to wrap.
Yeah.
Uh, okay.
Well, let's continue the conversation.
Yeah, yeah, this is just the start. I'm so glad we decided to do it. But
Hmm.
yes, it's a start.
It's a start. It's something. So thank you for having this conversation with me, Ling.
Oh, thank you for suggesting in the first place. It's it was a little surprise because you wouldn't typically, yeah, want to talk about things like that.
Not really. I mean, I feel like I
Yeah.
haven't said a whole lot, but even just having the conversation and recording it and putting it out there and whatever, it's like is a step for me. I'm like, yeah, like I wish I was more vocal, but I don't know. It's like,
This is so vocal. This is like so much more vocal than most people who I talk to that denying this whole thing, which is a lot of
mhm.
people who are like that. So no, Chloe, you're doing so much already. Um, all right, I want to hit the stop button.
Okay.
At some point.